Hello, everyone. We're excited to have you join us today for Pet Partners Facebook Live celebrating Disability Pride Month. I'm Margaret Callahan. I'm the Chief Mission Officer at Pet Partners. And while we're sort of settling in and getting everyone in, pop a note in the chat. Tell us where you're from. Say hi. We're really pleased to have you. A few things about Disability Pride Month. So, this is maybe a lesser known month to celebrate individuals with disabilities. And it happens to be that today, July 26th, is actually the 32nd anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA, being signed into law. And that is what Disability Pride Month centers around. So it's meant to celebrate all individuals with disabilities, also celebrate their individual identities, their culture, and of course recognize their contributions to society at large. So we're really lucky today to be joined by Pet Partners handler Stephanie Clark, who I'll have introduce herself in a moment, but we're really pleased just to be here celebrating with everyone about disability pride. And Pet Partners has always been proud to have both handlers and animals of real diverse backgrounds, obviously. And so we're delighted when we have individuals with disabilities who choose to join Pet Partners and become handlers. We welcome them. We've got all sorts of ways to help with accommodations. So if you've been considering becoming a Pet Partners team, but weren't sure if your disability would impact that process, that's something you can ask about today. But the short answer is we'd love to have you. So, oh, good. I see Tiger. Hi, Tiger. We're glad to have you join us. So, Stephanie, would you introduce yourself to everyone? Tell people why you're here and joining us today.
Well, my name is Stephanie Clark, and I live in Waddell, Arizona. And I have been a Pet Partners team with my first therapy dog, Parker, since 2016. And now have two others that are registered with Pet Partners as well. And hopefully we'll have even more in the future that are registered with Pet Partners and continue my volunteerism.
Fantastic. So tell us a little bit about your current dogs, Parker and Merritt.
And Dylan.
Oh, and Dylan. Excuse me.
So all of them are Kerry Blue Terriers, which isn't a breed that you see that often out there. And it's also, there's Merritt. Terriers usually aren't a breed that you would be like, oh my God, that would make an awesome therapy dog, like a golden retriever or a lab. But when I got Parker from a breeder in Canada and he grew up, he just had this most amazing temperament and so unlike most Kerry Blue Terriers. And my friend was like, you need to share him with everybody. Everybody needs to meet Parker and just really get to know him. So while I show my dogs as well, and so Parker is a retired show dog, and in that process of showing dogs, I use a professional dog handler, and because I'm kind of shy and don't want to be in the ring, and so when my friend convinced me to do the Canine Good Citizen test on Parker. And much like today, I didn't tell any of my friends at the time that I was doing the CGC, so nobody would come and watch me and make me nervous. But, he passed with flying colors, and I looked at the evaluation testing that Pet Partners does to be a registered therapy dog. And I'm like, okay, Parker could definitely pass that. So I did all of his training myself, and he had, he'd already been out and been exposed. He was 100% bomb-proof. And so I took him, signed up for the online part of what I needed to do for Pet Partners, and then did the evaluation. And he passed with flying colors on the first time with a complex rating. So then it was just like, well, okay, well, if Parker can do it, then I decided that his son, Dylan, should do it as well. And if I remember right, I think Dylan became a registered Pet Partners therapy dog in 2018, I think. 2018 or 2019. And then, as you see your dogs age, it's you start evaluating them as a therapy dog. It's like how old am I going to let them be, before it's time to retire. So I started training Merritt and got her. She became a registered therapy dog like right before COVID hit. So yeah, so she got some visits in before we had to take the big long break of COVID, but it's nice to see that continuation with my dogs, and having backup dogs. So as like Parker turned 12 in May, and the break with COVID really aged Parker a lot, not getting out that whole year off. And the first few times that I took him back out after we got the okay to go back from COVID, I could just see that he wasn't mentally there anymore. He definitely wasn't mentally there visiting children. And so when I took him to an assisted living facility and a memory care facility, and I actually kind of had to like push him over to be petted by the people, I was like, you know what, buddy, you're done. You're done. So Parker is officially retired with Pet Partners, and Dylan just turned 10 in February. And so when his registration expires at the end of September, he will go into retired status as well. So it's all going to be on Merritt at that point.
Yes, absolutely. No, COVID was hard on lots of therapy animal teams who, fell out of the habit of visiting and then went back, and it just wasn't quite the same. But it's a difficult decision to decide to retire an animal, but gosh, comes from a place of love and caring for your animal for certain.
Right.
What I love that they have a background in as a show dog too. That's exciting. It's many tasks and many jobs, and just shows lots of our animals are multi-talented.
Yeah, Dylan and Merritt are both retired show dogs as well.
There you go. So tell us about the kind of places you like to visit, Elizabeth. And I'm curious, people who've joined us and are watching online, they're hearing this wonderful, eloquent woman who's clearly passionate about her terriers, but they may be wondering why you're on a Disability Pride Facebook Live.
Well, I utilize a wheelchair. Back in 1985, I broke my back and was paralyzed from the chest down. And I did walk with a cane very slowly. But as I aged, it just got to the point where it was easier to use my wheelchair. And I have since 2016, like I have done all my therapy visits in my wheelchair. So we started off. I like to work best with children. And so my first, I spent 3 years working with an organization, and I was in a self-contained classroom that had all sorts of different behavioral issues, schizophrenia, autism, anger management issues. These children ran the gamut of issues, and the volunteer coordinators for that organization always joke that I probably had the hardest kids that anybody in that organization visited, but I loved it. I loved, especially being there for 3 years, starting off with these kids that, some didn't have a dog, didn't want to pet a dog, didn't want to have anything to do with a dog. And then by the end of the school year, they couldn't wait to see the dog. So, one awesome story from that school, there was this young girl that kind of started in halfway through the school year, and she could curse like a sailor. It was, she had a mouth on her. And there was one day, she came up to me and she's like, oh, I want to pet Parker. I want to pet Parker. And the teachers explained to her that she had to do the activity first, and then we would play with Parker after the activity. So during the activity, her behavior determined otherwise. And they went to take her from the room and said that she could not participate in the dog activity at that point. And she came up to me with a pencil, a sharpened pencil like this, in my face and was like, "You lied to me, you lied." At the end of the school year, on her own doing, she actually made a card for Parker and I thanking us for visiting, and she thanked me for taking such good care of Parker and bringing him every other week to the school to see her. And for that girl to go from, being so angry with me that she was holding a pencil up like she was going to stab me in the eye, to then making a construction card on her own, that warmed my heart, and made dealing with those difficult children worth it.
Oh, how amazing. And as a former teacher myself, I absolutely can appreciate anyone who spends time in classrooms, self-contained or otherwise. It can be a taxing environment, especially for managing a dog. So do you feel like the fact that you use a wheelchair impacts how you're perceived when you're on therapy animal visits? Oh.
You know what? There hasn't been a single child that has been scared of me showing up in a wheelchair. Of course, I always get some children that are like, "Oh, why are you in a wheelchair? Like, what happened? Why can't you walk?" Or they'll come up, and they'll want to like move my wheels, or something. And, I never shy away at telling them. Obviously, I give them the short abridged version. And I actually think that it helps in some way for kids to see, a disabled person just like anybody else. I just like roll right into the classroom with my dog, and honestly, I don't even think that they pay attention to the wheelchair.
Yeah, I love that because it's one of the core concepts behind the month of disability pride. Is it's this idea of reworking sort of negative narratives or biases that people may have. And your point is really well made. Children don't necessarily have those, and so
Right.
you've had this opportunity for them to have a really great, wonderful experience. And I suspect, no offense to you, Stephanie, but everybody's paying attention to your dog.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, there were two twin boys at Victory Autism Academy that Margaret and I go to on a regular basis, and even like the first day that I met these little twin boys, one of them just always just threw himself on my lap. I mean, like didn't even think anything of it. And then there was this other little girl that did it on a visit as well, and it's just like, to them, I'm just the same as them. If they do come up and start trying to push me around, then I do take the opportunity to explain to them that, this wheelchair is part of me. So you can't touch my personal space, any more than I can touch your personal space. So, it's an awesome opportunity to be there with my dog, but then also every once in a while teach them, there are boundaries, with disabled people and the different devices that they might use.
Yeah, absolutely. But I have to imagine in some places that you visit, maybe using a wheelchair poses some challenges.
It does. Before we came on, I was telling you about the hospice visit. Margaret and I also do visits with Banner Hospice. We've just started, and it's kind of been like a little hit or miss. So the second time I went to visit this particular patient, he had been moved into a different room. The first room it was very roomy. He was by himself. So go back, and I am told by the nurses, he's been moved to a different room. So go into the room, and now he's in a room with somebody else. And, the nurses don't go in with you. It's just you and the dog. And so I had to manhandle his wheelchair out of the way from my wheelchair. And then, the bedside table had like some serious locks on it and it was super heavy. So I couldn't move that out of the way. So it did make for an awkward visit because I couldn't get that table out of the way. I couldn't get any closer than about knee, him laying on the bed. So, I'm like trying to, kind of like prop Merritt up from underneath the table to get her paws up on his bed, so at least he can see some part of the dog.
Yeah.
So, that visit was a learning lesson because, we had just started visits in medical facilities. And, so he's now been moved to a different facility and we haven't gone there yet. But, now I know that if we go to this new facility and it's the same kind of situation where I can't get the reason why I'm there close enough to him, then I will, go and ask for some help. But, there's no shame in asking to, have easier accommodations, especially if it benefits, either the patient or the child or whoever you're visiting.
Absolutely true. No, I mean, accommodations are important and they're valuable. I mean, we really endorse that. So actually, you've talked a lot about registering with your dogs, and obviously are a seasoned Pet Partners handler. You talked about preparing for your evaluations. Did you need accommodations for your evaluations with Pet Partners for other teams who might be wondering whether they should do this or whether they'd be able to do that? Do you have any words of advice or wisdom for possible prospective teams?
The Pet Partners evaluation is it's pretty well laid out. It's in a big room. So I personally, and I use a manual wheelchair, did not need any special considerations to do the evaluation. And I've even acted as a neutral dog in an evaluation, which I was like, okay, like bonus, because, now not only is the other therapy team going to have to deal with my dog, they're also going to be like, oh, whoa, there's a wheelchair, even though that can be part of the evaluation itself. It's like I come with like multifacets of experiences.
You're the perfect package, I think.
Well, and my dogs get used to being around my wheelchair, so it's just, they don't even pay attention to it.
Sure.
It's just how I happen to get around with them.
Yep.
And so, it's not even a fear for them. And when I have been a neutral dog during a Pet Partners evaluation, none of the other dogs have reacted to my chair either. So it's kind of a win-win.
Yeah, very interesting. Well, and for prospective teams who are watching and maybe wondering about the evaluation protocols and things like that, we are happy to make accommodations for people who need them for their own disabilities. All you have to do is contact Pet Partners, and we work through that whole process with you and customize a solution based on your needs. So we love to have all sorts of different handlers and animals joining us. We even have some animals who have disabilities themselves. So lots and lots of variety. Well, what else would you like to share with people, Stephanie? What do you want people to leave knowing about either receiving a visit from someone who's using a wheelchair, about your views on Disability Pride Month? What feels most important to you?
I think really just not being scared, if you have a disability, to get out there and do something like this. I haven't run into, actually, I haven't run into any other disabled therapy dog handlers. But, it can be done, especially if you, if you have the right dog to do it, and then, you have the passion yourself to do it. I wouldn't let any disability, stand in your way, of doing what you're passionate about. And if it's doing therapy visits, with, your dog or cat or whatever species, that you have, then, by all means, don't be afraid to do it, because you'll find that when you get out there, nobody sees your disability. You're just a person with a huge heart coming to visit to make other people smile with your dog.
That's so beautifully stated, because I couldn't agree more. Our Pet Partners volunteers, to this, every single one the biggest hearts of people I've ever had the opportunity to interact with. The way all of you share your animals with your communities, and the way that your communities benefit from that unconditional love that your pets are able to share is truly remarkable, and it's just the most amazing thing.
It's, sometimes the days are hard, sometimes the visits are hard, and you wonder, it's like, oh, why? But then you'll have so many other breakthroughs that you see. If you're visiting children, like I visit a lot of children that have autism.
Mm-hmm.
And to start out the school year where they're terrified, they're screaming, they're like trying to run out the door because they've never been around a dog, or they don't want to be around a dog, they're scared of dogs. And then by the end of the school year, they are first right there in line, when you go in to see. I mean, that makes everything so worthwhile.
I love it, Stephanie. So great. All right. Well, I feel like, we've hit a lot of key points here, but I'm savvy enough to know that why people are here is because they want to hear about your dog, Stephanie. It's not about. So do you have another story you can share with us about a visit that was particularly memorable to you?
Well, yeah, I mean, like, really, there's, because I visit the Autism Academy so much. I mean, there's so many kids, like that I've mentioned, that it's just like a light switch goes off sometimes, that they're stand backish, they don't even like want to like touch or have the dog come near them. And then just to see them, there was one boy that and actually this didn't happen at the Autism Academy, although he did show up there again. And so that was like kind of nice to see him. But it was at the first school that I went to, self-contained. And we had gone into the K-3 class, self-contained classroom. And the teachers made all the children sit at their desks. And there was this little blonde-haired boy that like got down on the floor and kind of started like slithering over towards us. And so I, kind of went to get the teacher's attention. And I was kind of like, oh, this one. And she's like, no, it's okay. It's okay. And I had Parker with me. That boy pulled himself up into a crisscross applesauce sitting right in Parker's face and started talking to him. His teachers had never heard him speak before. And so it's like, they're like, oh my God. He's like, oh my God. And I'm, and now he's at the Autism Academy. And when he came back, I don't think it was me that he recognized, and I didn't have Parker with me, but he recognized the type of dog. And he was like, oh my God, is that Parker? And it's like, well, no, but this actually happens to be Parker's granddaughter, and if he sees me in the hallway, if I'm not visiting, his classroom on that day, he will ask me about Parker still. He still remembers Parker. So that was like really just, like overwhelming, that my dog helped that child become verbal.
Yeah. Unbelievable. Well, Stephanie, I can't thank you enough for all that you do as a pet partner, as part of your community, as a wonderful volunteer in so many settings, education, hospice. It just embodies what we hope everyone believes in the power of the human-animal bond. So I think we're just about wrapped up. I want to thank everyone who joined us on Facebook for this great live. Happy 32nd anniversary of the ADA passing. We are so glad to have volunteers of all abilities joining us at Pet Partners. And, if you're anything like the huge, warm, loving heart that Stephanie has with her dogs, we hope, if you haven't already decided to become a volunteer, you will.
It's absolutely worth it. I totally recommend it.
Thank you for that endorsement. And thank you everyone for joining us today.
Absolutely. You're very welcome. Thanks.